we will welcome Wayman Britt forward to the podium. And we'll go ahead and begin with the first question asked by Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. So I have question number one, which has two questions. That's the bonus. We have background material in front of us, obviously, and we're all aware. But would you please begin with briefly reviewing your professional career path and career goals, and identify what specifically draws you to work here in Kent County?
Well, as you all know, I've worked at the county for the past 14 years as the assistant administrator, and I oversaw the human services function, human services and health services functions for the county for 14 years, and most recently served as the interim county administrator. And I worked at Steelcase. I worked there for approximately 24 years, and I served in a number of capacities, working in operations management primarily, overseeing a big portion of the employer relations functions for the night shift, and also worked in operations as a superintendent and was responsible for the Context Factory 4 division. Within that role, I had a budget of about $60 million that I was responsible for. All of the processes and vertical integration of the product that we produced, and also served as a performance management consultant that went around the country and did audits and assessments on the major operations in Canada, North Carolina, and various places to assess them and determine, okay, how can they perform better. And then prior to that, I worked at Michigan National Bank. I was a bank teller to branch manager, and I also was responsible for collections. We would repo cars, vehicles when they were delinquent on their payments. And then prior to that, I had a brief career in the NBA. I played for the Lakers and the Pistons, and had an opportunity to learn how to be a team member. So worked primarily, though, with Steelcase and with the county for the past 30 so years. And you asked another question about why. Did you ask the question?
Yes, what draws you to Kent County?
The fiscal responsibility that the county, the reputation it has for being fiscally sound is important to me. The other thing I'm drawn to is the private-public partnership that the county has, the reputation that it has, the leadership role it plays. I believe my skill sets well with the county and the direction it's going. The relationships that the county has in the community, the key philanthropic community members, the business community, we need to make sure that we take advantage of those relationships and move us forward. So I believe I have the prerequisite skills to do that, and I want to make sure that someone guards against the county taking us. Daryl DeLabio did a fine job as the administrator before. I believe I've learned a lot from Daryl. I've been here for a while. I understand the strengths, the weaknesses of the county. I want to make sure that we carefully move us forward and seize the opportunity to make Kent County an even greater place to live and work.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Wayman, would you adjust the microphone up a little bit? There you go, so we make sure you get heard. Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Wayman.
Good morning.
What do you consider as essential in the relationship between the county administrator, controller, and the Board of Commissioners?
That there's a mutual respect and trust that exists between the administrator and the board. That the Board of Commissioners trusts that the administrator listens, understands their priorities, their issues, and that there's a willingness to work together to solve problems. I want to be empowered as the administrator, but I also understand the importance of empowering the board. So it's a mutual relationship. I know it's important not to get out over my skis, but also I know it's important to push and sometimes take a bit to do things that maybe the board or the community don't want to do. But we've been careful that we do it in alignment. So it's a shared vision thing that I wish that the administrator and the county board has. So one of mutual respect and trust, one of empowering each other to do our jobs the best way possible. That's the relationship I feel would be important.
Thank you, Commissioner Ponsman.
I'm going to try to say what voice I got left, so I'm going to pass to Dan and hopefully save the following.
Okay.
Good morning, Wayman.
Morning.
Question I have for you is, one of the greatest strengths of Kent County is its key role in leading collaborative partnerships. How has your professional experience prepared you to build on this Kent County strength?
Well, I'm a firm believer in collaboration and teams and working, and I go back in my history from where I grew up to the school I went to, the teams that I played on in college. And then now, for the past 14 years working in the community, I have been fortunate enough to serve on a number of nonprofit boards in this time, and even prior to that, working for the county on the DHS board. I understand the proliferation of nonprofits that exist and how collaboration works is really identifying who are the key players in our community and then allowing them to sit at the table with you. We have a lot of strengths, the county does, but we don't know it all. So I think we bring a lot to the table, other people that do as well. So my role as county administrator is to identify who are those partners in the community that we can share in this wonderful idea of making community better. I've served on the Community Foundation Board here in Grand Rapids. I've served on a number of boards that's their motto, working together. And of course, we have a great county system of collaboration. We have the Kent County Family and Children's Coordinating Council, people together in the community to identify issues and problems. And we have other subcommittees of the boards. I mean, several subcommittees, commissions, committees that we support to make sure collaboration works well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bukowski.
Thank you, Chair. Wayman, what would be your plan to engage each of the diverse municipalities of the county to fairly hear the various urban, suburban, and rural issues that may matter differently to each community?
One of the really good things that we have going for us in Kent County are these vehicles to do what you just asked about. We have the Metro Council, which embodies local township supervisors and mayors and city managers and of course the county, and we have representation on that particular board. So those things are kind of ongoing that we do, make sure that we are at the table with our partners in the community. I know that there are quarterly meetings that township supervisors have, and it's important that I be there. In fact, I presented to them most recently, gave an update, want to continue to do that with the township supervisors. We also, the City of Grand Rapids is a key partner, as you know. I meet regularly today with the city manager, and once a month we talk. And I believe we can do similarly with the other cities, Granville, Kentwood, Wyoming. Want to have those same kinds of relationships that I have with the City of Grand Rapids, not just the City of Grand Rapids, but with the other municipalities, Walker also. So that we can also hear each other, talk about issues, and work together. I think we need to do some things more structurally, maybe once a quarter, twice a year, host a forum meeting where we bring folks here in this room, perhaps get the county board behind that, they be a part of those meetings, and we just share what the county's up to, where we're going. I think that's an additional thing that we would want to do. We used to do that here every so often with some of the cities, and we got away from that. I would like to put that back in play.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stack?
Thank you, Chair. It
Morning.
it appears that not only do I share the same name with Commissioner Ponstein, but we share the same virus.
I'll switch you and I'll help.
Oh, I love
But-
Mary.
Unlike him, I'm going to move forward and ask the question. Please identify a trend, opportunity, or challenge that you believe will face the county in the near term, and how would you develop a strategic plan to address that?
The growing community, our growing community, we are becoming a very important place for people who want to come and work and live, and we're already seeing the crowdedness on the expressways coming into work in the morning, and we're starting to see parking lots downtown in particular not accessible to people. We're growing, and with that, there's a housing problem, I believe, that we're going to be facing. Not just affordable housing, but housing for middle and upper class. We have to not sit back and wait for that issue to hit us. We went through the recession in 2009. There was a lot of foreclosures. We don't have that problem anymore here in the county. We have to face the housing shortage and make sure that we have adequate places for people to live. And then the other thing I believe we have to do is deal with some of the health and human services issues in the county. Mental health issues in particular. As you know, we've been trying to make sure that the federal government, through Medicaid, provides funding to the local areas to support our mental health and health services program. So we need to make sure that we are on the front end of that, working with our state legislators and working with our county commissioners to make sure that our voice is heard. So strategically, we need to make sure that we don't wait. We need to identify what's not working, how can we get ahead of those things, and put a plan in place that's supported by our partners, not just the county. It's not just the county's problem. It's the townships, it's the other cities. We need to make sure that we are out front, though, in identifying what the issues are.
Good, thank you.
Vice Chair Bolter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wayman,
Morning.
please describe your skills in the area of fiscal stewardship and what techniques have you followed to manage government funds effectively?
Well, starting from Steelcase, I oversaw a $60 million budget in Context Factory 4. And what a wonderful experience it gave me in that 4 things we had to worry about: cost, quality, speed, and people. But at the end of the day, it was about what was the cost of goods sold and how were we going to make a profit. To understand profit and loss. County's a little different in that, of course, we have to worry about revenue, we have to worry about expenditure. We have to make sure that we are looking at trends, making sure that before we plan a budget, that we understand what happened last year, 2 years, 3 years ago, and develop a budget that makes sense, that's structurally balanced. We have a solid process here at the county to do that. Each year, there's a timetable that we put together. There's a capital improvement team that works together with all of the department heads. We also have the operating budget review team, and I've learned that process over the years working with Gerald DeLabio. We go through that process, and every year we end up with the opportunity to get in front of our board with the recommended budget, answer the questions, go through whatever discussions that we need to have, make sure that we provide those answers back. It's a fluid process, but there are certain things that we need to do. In fact, as of today, we're already working on what are the key critical issues that we're facing that we may need to put on the table for next year's budget. as my staff, we've had opportunities to go through, talk about our issues, our needs, what's working, what's not. So hopefully that information is useful. So I understand the importance of being proactive, but also being practical, getting through the system, getting it done on time, so that we meet our obligations with the state of Michigan.
Wayman, could you describe the process you would follow to comprehensively evaluate the current operations of the county and to develop innovative improvements?
Fortunately, we have had, past 3 years, experiences with the merger of the Community Action Agency and the Community Development and Housing function. And with that process, we learned how to dive deeply into the operations of both organizations to determine what the deficiencies are, and then to elevate up what potentially we might need to do to merge them and be more efficient and more effective. We have talented individuals in our office to help assist us with that. We have a process that we created. I would like to deploy that process and offer that process to other departments, whether that's Public Works, the Sheriff's Department, the courts, to not only do it for administrative services, but to do that for all of the other groups that we are associated with within the. And I believe the way we've done that so far has been good, and the credibility that we've gained over the years in assisting departments with performance management, performance excellence. We have a process that I think it's in place. We just need to now take that and be more intentional about it and say, we're going to take a look at the health department, or we're going to work with the courts, or we're going to work with the sheriff's department if they want us to help refine and improve their operation. We have great county departments. They run well, but no one is exempt from, improving, I don't believe. I think we can always improve. So then we have a process in place to do that. So over the next 6 months, we need to identify what projects, what programs we're going to target, and I have a list. So when the opportunity to move forward, we would press it and we would do those things.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hennessy.
What do you see as the county's opportunity to support diversity, equity, and inclusion? And how will you intentionally promote these values throughout our organization and the community?
This is a great opportunity for the county to take advantage of that we've created around this issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We've gone through a strategic planning process for the last 2 years in identifying what the county services departments need to do, what the administrator's office can do, what the Board of Commissioners' office can do more of. We have that intel. So with that information, we now can begin to push forward and identify what strategies we're going to deploy. A little bit ahead of some of the things that we were doing this past year, and asking commissioners to please make time to attend some important events in the community. I think we, as a county, can attend more events that intersect with the broader community. That's one of the things on the list. I believe that we have an awesome HR team behind us to help make sure that our Cultural Insight Council is strong. We have a great support and collaboration within the departments on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we do it in a way that's respectful, dignified. We went through some training the past year, getting people on the same page about what it is, what do we mean by cultural intelligence, and how do we elevate that. I believe it's important that we educate people around that before we begin to say, this is what you've got to do. We've got to be on the same page. So I think the county has really created a unique way to move us forward in that arena.
Commissioner Ball.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Wayman.
Good morning.
What do you see as a county administrator's role in communicating with the press and public?
Very important. What we say is important. And Daryl and I and Mary and others, we all know what we say gets recorded often, and people are watching us, the county, and so we have to have a great relationship with the media. We have to start with making sure we return their phone calls, number one, that we respect them, that they're part of us. They have a right to know. We have to have a posture of transparency. And hopefully they're feeling that today. We make our information available on our website. Our phone numbers are posted. And I would bet you they would all say that we return their phone calls within 24 hours or less, most often a couple of hours. So the posture that we take with the press is very important. Media, not only the MLive Group, the Business Journal, TV8, 13, 3, Fox, make sure I get them all in there. They're our friends. And we've erected the position of communications director liaison position. Lisa LaPlante's been serving in that role, and she's elevated our communications and outreach to an awesome level. And people are calling. How do you do that? Other municipalities and other places are asking, what's the formula? So we've created, I think, a posture and then a philosophy about how do we engage the community, how do we share information that's outstanding. We want to continue to do that. And I'm happy that I was very much behind, bringing that position into being. As the assistant administrator, having overseen the health department and understanding how effective that role was.
Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Wayman.
Good morning.
Can you describe for us a situation you've handled where the community faced a contentious issue with strong, diverging opinions, and what did you learn from that experience?
Maybe one recent, in the past couple of years, we had a situation with our friend of the court that is responsible for child support and neglect issues. And what we found was that when we made a decision to place warrant officers in the community, some people in the community felt that we were going to escalate the issue of more hauled off to jail because they didn't have the wherewithal to make their payments. And of course, we have a responsibility as a county to support our sheriff's department, their mandate, and the federal government's mandate to make sure that children are properly supported in the state of Michigan. So it's very important for us to make sure that we were doing the right things to do that. Very contentious situation. You were all involved with that. I know that you all have familiarity. You probably don't know what happened behind the scenes before the engagement committee was created. We sat in rooms, discussed with the individuals what the issues were. I sat in a room with my boss, Daryl, and a couple of other individuals, and determined that it would be a good idea to have a recommendation made to the board chair to supplant a subcommittee. We created an engagement committee to deal with that. And I think that the outcome was very positive. We left with the idea to maintain the 2, 3 sheriff deputies, but also we modified our approach, and I believe now the key individuals, and they're key leaders in our community that were involved with that. The City of Grand Rapids was involved with that. Our staff facilitated that discussion, did an awesome job. So that's one, and there's a couple others, but I'll leave it to that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Wayman.
Good morning.
How would you describe your management and leadership? Could you identify both strengths and weaknesses related to your management and leadership style?
I'm an inclusive leader. I'm a good listener. I'm effective in gaining an understanding of another person's point of view. I would probably be described as a strategic, visionary influencer. That's my leadership style. With that, being a visionary, being strategic, sometimes this is the weakness that might come about. I may paint a picture that's a little bigger sometimes than it needs to be for some people, and I have to ratchet it down, slow down a bit, and make sure that people understand where I'm coming from, and not get out over my skis, not push too quickly. So I've learned that over the years. I need to take a step back, reflect, think about what I'm pushing, make sure that we're all on the same page. But I'm an empowerer of people. I worked to make sure we can have a team approach to solving problems and working together to get things done. That's who I am. That will never change. It's ingrained in me. So that's what I would say about my leadership style, my leadership approach to things, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mass.
Thank you, Chair. Wayman, please describe the process you would utilize to recruit and select talented senior staff.
First of all, let's make sure that those that are talented today, that they stay around for a while, and that we do what we can to make sure that their life here is a positive one. But after that, we've got to take inventory of the skill sets that we need and make sure that we cast a wide enough net to obtain the person that we desire, much like what we're doing here with the administrator controller function. Some positions we'll have to utilize the national search for positions. We will not. We have a strong HR team here at the county, and they have a process in play that helps us identify the candidates for positions. I think it's important for the administrator to have a close relationship with the HR department to make sure that there's a constant query of who might be leaving and who might be up and coming that we ought to spend more time with developing. So perhaps there are people within the organization that can step into these positions. They've been here for a while. What can we do to motivate them, to encourage them, to build them up so that they're able to take the place of those who are going to be leaving? I think that's smarter than, casting a wide net and not knowing for sure what you're going to get. It may be that they have a resume, but they don't have the experience of working in the culture here. So I think it's important that we first identify what the needs are, what the skill sets are, and whether or not in-house to fill those positions. And then if we can't, then we got to move out and we've got to work to find someone to take those spots.
Thank you.
Commissioner Greavy.
Thank you, Chair. Wayman. Hi.
Morning.
How do you hold direct reports accountable for projects and/or issues you've delegated to them?
Constant communication, whether email, weekly meetings, performance evaluations, performance review process have in place, walking around, stopping in, not just the formal process, but just stopping in. How's it going? Being available to people. But then if there are issues, let's identify what the issues are, and I believe it's important that we don't take ownership away from people, that we support them, but it's, end of the day, it's their job to correct and improve. So coach them and move them to correct things that need to be fixed, and you got to do it in a way that maintains their self-esteem, hopefully, and doesn't remove accountability at the same time. So the way in which you approach it, systems that you have in place for review on a regular basis, I think are the ways that you hold people accountable. And making sure that you're about making sure that they're successful, not holding back, Be willing to have a conflict every once in a while, that they know for sure what it is that they need to work on to improve. That's important. So two-way communication, systems in place, right posture, being there for them, not just to point the finger at them. Those are the things that are important.
Commissioner Womack.
Thank you, Chair. So, Wayman Britt, can you describe a situation when you disagree with your governing board and how you approach that difference of opinion?
Yes. Very carefully.
Next question.
So
He's very strong.
that's going to happen. I mean, we're going to have those situations where there's going to be a conflict, a disagreement, an opinion, or whatever. And first approach is to make sure that you take the time to identify what the issue is. Make sure you carefully identify whether it's an issue that is worth bringing to their attention, or if it's something that you say it's not worth it. I mean, don't make mountains out of molehills. We're not perfect. That's first thing. Chill out, take a break. But there are going to be those times, and so in the past, we've wanted to push on various projects. And I'll take the Veterans Affairs Department, Veteran Services. Community push to create a millage. Really, there was a lot of support in various places to do that. The veterans deserve more support. But making sure that we do that within the framework of process and delivering a successful, if a millage vote was going to go for it, needed to do that. So yeah, there was a situation where I was asked, what are you doing? You can't get out ahead of the board. Make sure that you have clarified what the issue, the need is, and do your due diligence, and then let's bring that back to the board. And eventually, in that particular case, we created a subcommittee that was formed. We worked on it for 2 years, and we came back with analysis that said, yes, we should implement or recommend a millage vote.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Melton.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Wayman.
Morning.
So if elected as our next county administrator,
Appointed?
if selected, what do you predict your tenure might be?
At least 10 years. And I just say that I see myself working for a long time, so 10 years at least, if they would have me, maybe 9, if they would have me, if you would have me, whatever the terms are that you'd like to put in front of me, but I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go.
Okay, thank you. That covers our standard questions, so we'll move now to individual questions. And I'll keep as usual. Who would like to start? Commissioner Matz.
Wayman, last night, I heard you use the word humble or humility quite a bit. I haven't heard you use that word at all, I don't think, today. Just sort of talk about that.
Maybe it was the questions that were asked, not sure.
Or the audience?
By the audience or the interviewers. But it is important, being humble, humility. I strive to be a humble servant. I strive to be a servant leader. So I don't know why it's not brought up today, but that's my posture.
Well, I would, you are a humble person, so it comes across. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bukowski.
Thank you, Chair. Wayman, in the second question, you said an essential component of your relationship with us as the commission is respect and trust. At the same time, you said sometimes you need to agitate a bit. And so my question is, do you have any suggestions at this time, or thoughts on how you would make the standing committees better, or our work better as a commission? Maybe some agitation for the 19.
Yes. The standing committees as they are, I think, function quite well today. Could they be better? Probably. That would be a subject for me to discuss with the chairs of those committees, the chairs of those committees, and with the board chair. Looking at each one of them today, I would say the legislative committee perhaps has a lesser load today, so we need to identify what more we might consider on the table for them. Perhaps engaging more in terms of the legislative priorities, that the list that we've created. I think we could take that a step further, and I think we're doing that today already. So engaging them in more discussions around legislative priorities would be one thing. The Finance Committee, I think we shouldn't allow just the Legislative Review Committee to hear performance measurements update. We ought to figure out a way to provide the Finance Committee also with that data, that information. So figuring out how to do that, to empower them with the information that also the Legislative Committee has, I think is important. So I think sometimes they don't all hear the same information, and we got to work on making sure that they hear it the same, so that when it's time for a board meeting resolution, to approve a resolution, they're all on the same page. We do that somewhat with our work committees, our work sessions that we put in place over the years, but we could probably beef that up a bit.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Milton.
Thank you, Chair. Wayman, there are several words that you used that I really grabbed hold of. I liked your description of yourself as a visionary, and that you were an empowerer of people. Actually, you said you were a strategic visionary and an influencer. The reason I like that is that the district that I represent, Kentwood, one of our superintendents was in fact a visionary, and she had a vision that all students, regardless of where they came from, what they did the night before, were equally as smart as the person next to them. Using your visionary talents, how, and you said some collaborating to bring the Granville and Kentwood and Wyoming and Rockford more into our reality, or our focus, our daily looking at. How might you decide you can do that? And for somebody along here who's not a visionary, and says, boy, that doesn't sound good to me at all.
So the way that I look at being a visionary is simply making sure that people first of all, the question of whether we care or not. And I think that that's the premise for where I start. The county is very fortunate to have, I've said this before, we're very credible. So we've got to be not afraid to push out more, to get out ahead of the issues. And when we do that, we've got to make sure that we communicate and bring those partners to the table with us before we began doing things. So strategic thinking, visionary work that we've done, I would look at the Kent School Services Network as an example, where we now have multiple partners at the table, from superintendents to business leaders to philanthropic leaders, CEOs on that committee, and that's all of Kent County. We also have the Kent ISD on that team. So have that in play before 2004 when I came here. We determined that it was not just the school district's problems to make sure that children are ready to learn. That if we didn't do things in advance of that, we would see more of our young people in our juvenile detention center that would end up being on our human services roles. So my concept is to get ahead of that and identify what we can do to partner with our community to solve that. And we've done that. There's been a great partnership arrangement with Community Foundation, the Fry Foundation, the Steelcase Foundation, Ken ISD. I'm probably leaving some others out, but my vision was to attach myself to the vision of other people in the community that have a similar notion about how do we improve the trajectory of our community, our children. So, yes, my hope is that I can carry that kind of attitude forward, recognizing that the Board of Commissioners are important in that equation, that we as administration can't get ahead of the county's vision, the county's priorities in solving some of those problems also.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. Wayman, your predecessor had a couple of characteristics that I think are important to be an effective administrator in Kent County. Number one, I think he was involved in community service outside of his job as the administrator. Could you give us a couple examples of where you have done that, part one? And then part two, he was good at fostering innovation from his staff. And I think that's important as an administrator here in Kent County. Could you maybe give us a couple examples of innovation that you've worked on, and how important you think is fostering that within your staff as well moving forward?
Right. Yeah, we've created a system under my leadership, the performance management program elevated now the performance excellence process, whereby we create 4 things that we identify for our county departments to shoot for as excellence. Innovation is one of those things. Community impact is another one. Collaboration is another one. And then we also have the Chairman's Award. We now, each year, will celebrate the excellence of our county departments. So by doing that and identifying what we consider as excellent, I think motivates other people around the idea of what can we do better, what can we do more innovatively to improve. And we have a really nice document that we created, and I just had this here, that we share with people, and we say, here are some of the excellent things that we do around the county. And I believe your other question, Commissioner, was about community service.
Yes.
I've served on several nonprofit boards, not at the bequest of the chairman of the board or Darrell, but things that I felt that I wanted to do personally. The Salvation Army, I've served on their board. Mel Trotter, I'm sorry, not Salvation. I work with Salvation, but Mel Trotter's board. Served on the Downtown Market Board, Sports Commission's board, the Boy Scouts board. Giving my time back to the community, making sure that we work together to help our needy people. So I get asked a lot, and I try to make time for it. Sometimes it's tough, but I think it's important that we set that example for other staff in our organization to do the same.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Bolter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have another vision question for you. You talked a lot about vision and being visionary, and I think that's great, and we definitely need that. And I understand you kind of have to go, you don't want to get over your skis and with the board. But if you didn't have to worry about that, what would your specific vision be? What's our 2030 plan going to look like? Where would you want to take us kind of specifically? Is there any specific ideas you'd have? And, we've got the Sports Commission, we've got the Convention Center. What other things you want to do if you could just do whatever you wanted? What would that be? What would that look like?
We need to grow, I believe, more leadership in our community, stronger leadership in our community. So is that my responsibility alone? Probably not. But I feel we have an obligation to figure out who's going to be left behind to run things. So I really feel the county, the administrator, ought to be working with our community to identify how are we going to set the table for 2030 and beyond. We have partners in our community. We need to leverage our partners. The Grand Action Committee, which recently reduced itself, is a key partner in that. The Right Place is a key partner in that. Our friends with the DeVos family, Dick Voss and others, they're very key to that. And I believe that they all have the same idea that we have, to make Kent County a special place, a very prosperous place. So that means that we need to make sure that we are in those rooms. We're sitting with them, beside them, to cast the future for this community. So my vision is that we have multiple places where we look in public sector where we've groomed more leaders, so to take us forward. I believe we need to do more to mobilize our minority community so that they have a better stake in our prosperity. So how many minority-owned businesses can we encourage? How can we connect them to the right resources and the right people so that it's a quilt of a diverse, empowered community that's about service and about making sure that our community is strong. We've got to grow ourselves to build more of the strengths that we see in certain pockets of our community. So we've got to grow that out and build that up.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stack.
Thank you, Chair. Wayman, arguably, one of the more critical functions that we do every year is the development of our annual budget. Can you talk a little bit about what you think is the proper role of the elected commissioner in that process?
Yes. The commissioner's role is to ensure that they set the parameters for the administrator, to make sure that we understand what the priorities are, number one, before we began developing the budget. And so, very important that we get that straight. And then after that's done, important for them to understand what's in that budget, what we're recommending in the budget. And it's important for them to have the time to assess that, ask the questions, and then suggest modifications to that budget before it becomes reality. It's important for the board to take note of that, be about casting the vision, creating the direction, the priority, the parameters, and then once the administrator and his team builds the budget, draft the budget, begin looking at that budget and asking the questions, the right questions, to make sure that we have a sound plan going forward.
Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Saltfeld. Morning, Wayman. How are you today?
Morning, great.
Good. One of the questions that was asked was about tenure. You'd said that you'd hope to be here another 10 years if you get this appointment. So having said that, what do you think the county's going to look like at the end of that 10 years from what it is? I mean, if you go back 10 years, what it is today is drastically different. What do you think Kent County's going to look like, and what role, if any, do you think the county's going to have in steering that to what you think it might be?
The county's going to be a major player. I think that in 10 years, 15 years, we will not only be one of the best places to work, we get a lot of recognition, but because of all of the new development that's happening around town, county, we're sprawling, and there's not going to be enough places to put up businesses, set up businesses very long. So we have to be very strategic about making sure that we have the right infrastructure in place to ensure the growth. It's happening. You go on Expressway 96 in the morning, be careful at 8 o'clock. You might not get here till 8:30 if you start out at 7:30 in the morning sometimes. It is a growing community. So we have to figure out how do we put the right infrastructure, the housing, the support systems in place to make sure that we're ready. And to take advantage of the hard work that we've all put in to make this place a really wonderful place to live and work. So in 10, 15 years, okay, look back 10 years prior to now and where we were. We went through a recession even. The recession, look at what has happened in this community. It tells you that we, even with the recession, we can move the dial. So we're in a pretty prosperous time right now. So I think there's going to be big leaps forward in our community. We have to be at the ready, we have to be at the table to make sure that we're partnering with people so that we don't end up with a lot of bottlenecks in our community and an inability to provide the service we're good at.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Skaggs.
Well, I suppose I should have raised my hand earlier as Vice Chair Bolter and Commissioner Ponstein sort of grabbed my question, but so I'll pivot to another one. One of the things that you mentioned, Wayman, was about some of the weaknesses of the county. Now you've talked about hoping to serve 10 years. Your predecessor was here for 22 years. So we would have a lot of stability and continuity, and there's a lot of advantages to that. But I wonder, as who's going from potentially going from the second chair to the first chair, where do you see areas of improvement that could be made?
Okay. I think my experiences have given me an opportunity to dig a little deeper into the organization and pick up on some of the concerns that even Daryl has. And one of the big things that he was concerned about, as well as I, is the bureaucracy sometimes that creep in, the silos that creep into the organization. And that's a weakness, because when you have these silos, you have these boundaries, people don't communicate, they don't share information. Things that you could have done, you don't do, or it takes longer to get things done. We can't afford that. So we have to figure out how to identify those weaknesses, those silos, those, in some cases, they're fiefdoms that, I would call them fiefdoms, where, departments really run well, and they do a great job, but they can do better. So how do we help them to see that it's important that they also hear from other departments and that they listen to different approaches to get things done? So we're good. That's a problem. We can be sometimes too good in that we now don't listen and we don't want to help evaluate it and assess. We had that at Steelcase, and I had the experience of going through operations, and even though they were hitting the numbers in one area, they weren't hitting the numbers over here, and then there were people problems too that we didn't know about. So important that we really do a good assessment of where there are bottlenecks of innovation, of excellence and so forth, and work on those.
Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. Interesting, you just started talking about what I was going to ask about, Wayman, which is those silos. When you talked about how we evaluate current operations and develop innovative improvements, you talked about performance measures, and those are the way they are right now are very much about evaluating the silos. And I hear you saying that we need to figure out how to get outside those. And where I wanted to go with you, so I'm going to push you a little bit further now, is do you have any ideas about how we can do that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah.
Because you've obviously thought about it for a while. And I also want to just throw out there that the county was, really on the forefront of leading the K-Connect initiative, which was really about breaking down those silos in the community. Any ideas what that might look like at the county?
So we have data that's out there. We have data in the performance measurements. We have data that the fiscal system that we need to pull up and pull out and understand better. It starts with the data. And so when you have the data, we need to take the time to think about where do we go to ask more questions about why and what could we do to elevate. And if a department is performing every year at an excellent level, 100%, cause them to go back to 75%, but maybe what could we do to stretch you a little bit further? So we have a team in our office very small team. The administrator's office, the management analyst, and myself are that team. And we also utilize an administrative assistant to do that work for us. We need to grow their capacity to analyze that data. We need to work alongside our IT department with other departments that have the technical expertise to mine that data. Yes, luckily we've created K-Connect, but they're somewhat outside of the county. We need to bring them in, that information into the county so that we can utilize that data and identify where are the areas that we need to work on. So Commissioner, what I would want to do is take advantage of K-Connect, embody an even stronger team within the county to take advantage of the information that's there and then in response to the data.
Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. Wayman, ask anybody about Kent County, and a lot of them default automatically to Grand Rapids. They think Grand Rapids first because we're attached at the hip, good, bad, or indifferent. That's just the reality. And you touched on some infrastructure issues that I think sometimes go largely ignored, especially people that live within the city. They're so accustomed to the way it is. People coming from outside to the city, all of a sudden, where do we park? Water issues that are going to be coming up in the future. Just all kinds of infrastructure problems as we grow, as you pointed out. And I think it's important for our new administrator to be able to nudge those who may not see those issues. And since we have such a close working relationship with the city of Grand Rapids, how would you leverage your position to nudge them and say, hey, I don't think you're thinking outside the box here, because there's a lot of people as we grow that aren't going to understand how to get around the city and those types of issues.
The city has a talented team. They're great at what they do, but you're right, over time, people can become a little bit less interested in thinking outside of the box. So my role as administrator is to make sure that I create a relationship with whoever the city manager is. And my board chair and his relationship with the city mayor, in tandem, we can work together to loosen that up, to improve upon that. And not just keep our eye on the city. They're next door, but there's Wyoming, there's Walker, like I said, there's Alpine. There are other places around that are part of the county. And we've worked on an interesting project, and I don't want to belabor this too much, but we had an interesting project called the Resiliency Project. We tried to get $233 million here, government, to improve our ability to withstand flooding. And that was something that we identified as an opportunity. The city would have benefited really greatly from that, but the outlying areas also. So we had to make room for not just the city of Grand Rapids, but for the other municipalities to sit at that table. And it's important that we do that. The county had to do that, because if not, being at that table, it would have been just a city project. So that's the role that we need to play. We need to be a unifier and a deliberator, and sometimes even a watchdog.
Thank you.
We're at an hour, and I have 3 more questions, and I want to get those asked. So we'll probably do those 3 and then wrap up after that. So Commissioner Womack?
Yes, when we talked about some of the weaknesses you identified, I thought about my first year here as a Kent County Commissioner, Mr. Wayman Britt. And one of the things I identified was when it comes to some of our technology, when it came to our elections, it was this year that we moved from a DOS system, and we just had a beautiful election cycle that, I mean, just so much credit to that department on how smooth it went. But when I look at us moving to DOS in 2017 and seeing some of our systems were on pre-millennium technology, sometimes when I walk in through the back and I see the video equipment that we use to even film our board meetings, they're pre-millennium technologies. So I want to know, she said prehistoric, I said pre-millennium. But sometimes I feel if we have departments that see needs, how can we help them move on those needs before we get a state mandate, or if we have the funds before the state initiates those with those funds so that we don't stagnate our employees and we don't stagnate their growth? So what are the things that you think we can do to ensure that our employee skill sets and our equipment is moving with today's emerging technology?
Okay, so I'll answer the second part of that, but first of all, we are improving our ability to videotape and to record this meeting. So in February, you should see and feel a different presence in this room, so we are on it. But we have to keep current with the day of the world today, and our IT department is very critical in that process. So we have to make sure that we give them the latitude to forecast what are the things that we need. Within sound fiscal government, within the county, there are multiple needs, lots that are out there. So we have to be very strategic about how we deploy the county resources to accommodate, whether it's technology, whether it's new infrastructure, but we have to push ourselves to do that because we've been in a recession we were in a recession for quite some time. Our bank account, our reserves aren't as strong as what people really think they are, and we have to be careful that we don't get ourselves in a pinch where we lose our credit, not able to fulfill the services that we have. But you're right, we need to take it more of a proactive approach, and we have identified that in our mini strategic planning process this past year, the past 3 months, the staff we've met, and we see that as an issue, we see that as a problem, so we have a team talking about those things today.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Brady?
Thank you, Chair. Wayman, earlier Commissioner Korndijk asked about collaborative partnerships. And I'm wondering if you could expand upon you see the opportunity for new and enhanced partnerships.
So public health is really one of those areas I see us taking advantage of. As you know, you serve on the Community Health Advisory Committee, and you're the chair of that committee. And from that, we've been able to erect a broad section of community to identify what we need to do to improve lead. That same approach needs to be taken in other areas within the county that we're not so good at. So social determinants of health affect the well-being of our students in schools and our ability to employ good candidates. And so we need to, I think, take the same approach as we've taken with lead, as we've taken with the performance-based contracting work that we've done for child welfare, and take that and move it into the health arena. And so we need to identify those partners the same way that we've done with the lead paint issue. Figure out what we can do to raise the concerns, the issues, identify the solutions around what are some of the health issues, not necessarily health. Some of them are social issues, some of them are housing issues, some of them are just employment issues that affect a person's health. So how can we grab a group of caring, committed people in our community to deal with that issue? And we're working on that. The council that's been put forth through the health department and the mental health agency, the council that we've created. So that is coming forth soon, and we have heads of the departments for health, mental health, and Mercy Health, Spectrum Health, and Pine Rest that are at the table. And so we're building another initiative to those things, another great collaborative opportunity for us.
Commissioner Hennessy.
Hi. You've addressed a lot collaboration, working with community partners, with state legislators. Rounding that out, there's another group there, that state bureaucracy, working with the departmental people within the state. How do you see us as working in the future with those people who are
We have to spend more
You talked about silos too, and
Yes.
it's like, okay,
Yes.
this is what us that will keep on going. So how do we work with them?
Right.
And also, like, what do we expect of our lobbyists? How are we going to use them? We're
Right.
talking about hiring a
Sure.
national, federal
Sure.
lobbyist right now. So how do we use
Sure.
them? But the state
Sure.
bureaucracy.
Yeah, we can't rely on the lobbyists in Lansing or a lobbyist at the federal level to do our work. We have to be in Lansing and we have to be in Washington, D.C. So we have to make time available for my team to be there along the lobbyists. And we have to be working with our legislative chair to make sure that we're aligned about what the issues are and that we work collectively to define what the issues we need to be more proactive about solving in Lansing. And so we have to take more of a proactive approach on that. Spending more time with our lobbyists is important. So we've ratcheted that up even for the last 4 or 5 months and spend with our lobbyists from Lansing. We need to continue that, but we also need to make it a priority to be there, to be in the rooms with our legislators, with our department heads, whether it's Department of Health and Human Services, or whether it's another group. We need to make sure we know who those players are, that we're in the room, we're elevating the issues, and we do that today, but we can do more of it. So I need to figure out how to free up my time, my staff's time to do that.
I'm still hearing, state legislators. What about the departmental people within the state bureaucracy?
Those individuals we have to have a relationship with, and we have to grow our understanding of who those players are. And right now, the Department of Health and Human Services is somewhat fractured. And so who are the new players that are going to be at the table within that group? With the lead issue that's happening in Flint, Michigan, it's taking a lot of their time and focus away. But we still have to make sure that we know who those people are and take the time to communicate with them. We're working right now on a parking issue for our local Health and Human Services complex. We have to identify who those folks are that we need to work with to make sure that we capitalize on improving the parking at that location. So we've identified those folks. We were down there this week. So we have to get the Rolodex out, change the Rolodex because some of the names are changing, and find out who those players are and make sure that we have them on a speed dial and that we're there and that we work alongside our lobbyists to get in their offices. And we do that, we need to do more of it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That completes the questions. We're at about an hour, 10 minutes. I will give you a minute or two if you want, Wayman, to comments. It's up to you.
I want you to know that I don't take this process lightly. I understand the due diligence you have to go through to make a decision to determine who your administrative controller is going to be. But I hope you look back at my resume and my experiences that you've had with me over the past 14 years and recognize you have a winner in me, a person that's motivated, that has the energy to be the administrator that you desire. So my hope is that when you look back all of the data, all the information, the interviews, what I said today, that you would find that I am the right person for you in this role. So that's what I would have to say. I already know, I don't have any questions about process because I know the process. I wouldn't ask that, so take your time. Look forward to hearing back from you, your decision.
Great, thank you.